Hello everyone, welcome back to Movie Recapped Girl. Prepare for a chilling sci-fi thriller where humanity's desperate evolution takes a monstrous turn in the Titan. By 2048, the world's so packed with people that we've pretty much run out of all our natural resources. The government starts a project to change the genes of 14 soldiers so they can head to Titan, one of Saturn's moons, and start a new life there. These 14 volunteers and their families are sent to live in a fancy neighborhood with their own high-tech, luxurious homes. Rick, an ex-pilot, volunteers and brings his wife Abigail, a doctor, and their kid Lucas along with him. The program's boss, Dr. Collingwood, really believes in Rick because he knows how tough he is. I mean, Rick was in the Air Force, got shot down, and then managed to cross the Syrian desert all by himself. Hurt and without any food or water for 3 whole days. That's proof he can survive anything. Rick and Abigail are both doing this for their kid, hoping to secure his future. But Abigail confesses to Collingwood that she's kinda scared Rick might get really ill. Collingwood says it might go down like that, but she shouldn't stress out. All Rick's gonna need is some good follow-up care. After all the volunteers are done settling in, they kick off their first session with Collingwood to begin the therapy. First, he gives a talk about the project. He shows how we've screwed up Earth and why we need to move to Titan next. It's the only place in our solar system that also has an atmosphere and a basic ecosystem. But it's also got this rain made of liquid methane falling into gigantic oceans and lakes that they can't even swim in. Plus, the air is full of nitrogen, so they can't breathe. It's just way too cold for them to live there. So, instead of changing Titan to suit humans, they've chosen to genetically tweak humans so they can handle living on Titan as it is. One volunteer is confused about why the bodies won't reject the treatment. Collingwood says the tests went well, but also admits not everyone might make it. The volunteer keeps challenging the program, but Rick shuts him down and suggests he should leave if he's not into it. The volunteers, who survived some really tough situations, are from all corners of the globe. Once the meeting wraps up, they get card keys so they can roam around the base freely. They're then taken to the lab for the first of 300 shots they're going to get over the next few weeks. Dr. Freya attempts to break down what each scene is about, but Rick can only grasp some of what she's saying. From that point, Rick's family gets into a new groove, but it's nothing special. Lucas heads off to school while Abigail runs the house. Whenever she can, she's right there with Rick, helping him get through his various treatments. All the volunteers quickly become buddies and start chilling together outside their base. Since they're neighbors, they can have dinner parties and barbecues whenever they want. You know, sometimes the chats at these parties get kinda gloomy, like when one of the helpers confessed he's scared that after spending 2 years on Titan as agreed, they won't let him return. One day, their barbecue party gets pretty boozy because it's the last time the volunteers can have a drink. Abigail drank too much and starts feeling woozy in the evening, so Rick gives her a hand to get upstairs. But he's the one who ends up collapsing, starting to cough a ton as if he can't catch his breath. Abigail finds him hot with fever, so she quickly brings him to the bedroom. She gives him some meds and puts him to bed, staying with him the whole night. A bit later, Collingwood is super happy with how the volunteers' DNA samples are turning out, which means it's time for a major test. The team is told to stay underwater for ages without air tanks, and after about 30 minutes, only Rick and Tally are still going, turning it into a fun contest. At the end, Tally only lasts 39 minutes, but Rick is so chill he even starts swimming in the pool. Everyone's surprised because Rick isn't swimming like your average person. He's speeding through the water, dolphin style. At night, Rick teaches his son this cool new trick in their backyard pool. Then he puts Lucas to bed, and the boy catches him off guard by mentioning his late grandpa, who he thinks would have really enjoyed all of this. Then he heads to the pool with his wife to goof around, but things get weird when Abigail spots some black lines on Rick's skin. Rick is puzzled about what's happening, but suddenly everything goes back to normal, and Abigail shrugs it off for the moment. A few days later, the volunteers have their first operation. Ryan, one of the wives, drops by to Abby's place so their kids can play. She also talks about some stuff that's been bothering her. She admits she's super freaked out and doesn't feel like her husband fits in here. So Abigail reassures her by reminding her that the volunteers are here to save everyone, especially their kids. Rick's surgery goes well, and he heads back home to hang out with his family. Abigail's glad to see him doing okay, but she's also stressed about the possible side effects she read about in the instruction booklet they handed out. Later that night, Abigail wakes up and realizes she's all alone in bed. Turns out, Rick's in the kitchen, cooling himself down with some ice, because he's feeling really warm. Abigail gets a larger bucket of cold water ready for him, and Rick dares her to a small game. They both stick their hands in the bucket, but Abigail pulls hers out after a few minutes because it's too cold. Rick, on the other hand, leaves his in, showing that he doesn't feel the cold anymore. The next day, they go on a jog together and take a break at a spot by the road. It's got the best view of the whole place. Rick is bummed out that he couldn't save the world. They keep doing different tests, like running while wearing masks that mimic Titan's air, and swimming for ages in super cold water. Sometimes a volunteer can't handle it and has to call it quits for the day. But Tally, she's a tough cookie. She insists on staying in the water even when she's freezing. Rick gives her a hand by showing her how to do underwater meditation. One day, after all the tests, everyone's in the showers and Rick realizes his hair's falling out. Tally also says it's happened to her. Out of nowhere, they hear some loud yelling and find one of the ladies having a fit and puking blood. The doctors scramble to help her, but despite their efforts, they can't save her. It's the group's first encounter with death. Later on, the volunteers catch up to chat about what went down. Some of them are also scared of kicking the bucket, but the others tell them, hey, we all knew what we were getting into. Even though they know they shouldn't, they choose to drink anyway to deal with stuff. While Ryan's outside consoling her hubby Zane, Andrew, Tally's other half, is in the kitchen giving Abigail a hand. He tells the tale of how they bumped into each other and how he hustled to be with Tally till the very end. Then Tally pops in to mention that Andrew's now super eager to have kids. So when Andrew steps away to set the table, Tally admits that he believes she'll dip out for 2 years, sort things out, and then settle down as a good wife. But she wants something beyond that. While they're eating dinner, Abigail spots that the veins of all the volunteers are turning black every now and then. Out of nowhere, they hear Zane freaking out in the garden and going after Ryan. The other dudes quickly run out and pin Zane until he's chilled out, while Abigail gets Ryan out of there. So the next day, Freya drops by the neighborhood with extra meds for the volunteers. It's to prevent them from getting sick like the dead lady and Zane did. Abigail sees that some of those doses are quite strong and wants to talk to Collingwood about it, but he's nowhere to be found. Later that night, Rick ends up puking and there's blood in it too. Abigail tells Rick to chill while she tidies up. When Rick's not looking, she sneakily takes a bit of his blood. When she goes around the house to lock up, she finally spots cameras hidden all over. Looks like the folks from the program are keeping an eye on them round the clock. The next time Rick hops in the pool, he sees his skin starting to peel, but he doesn't seem to care much. When they hit the sack, Abigail spots that Rick's skin looks awful, and he's losing hair, which just makes her worry even more. So, the following day, Abigail checks out Rick's blood under a microscope and sees it's turning into a weird black color. A bit later, the volunteers go through another major step where their eyes are made to be like a cat's, allowing them to see in the dark. The operation is a success, but Rick needs to keep his eyes covered for some time, and his family needs to assist him at home. One night, Abigail hears Rick moaning because his eyes start bleeding. They bring him back to the lab for more surgery. Abigail goes up to Collingwood and asks him what's the deal. She tells him something's living inside Rick, and she's caught onto the cameras. Collingwood says he didn't ask for the cameras. They were sent over by the Pentagon for safety reasons. Also, he mentions that his blindness is temporary and part of the process. He'll see again in a few days. Abigail suspects he's not telling her everything, but Collingwood just sends her back home. Abigail heads home to pack some clothes for Rick, and out of nowhere, she hears sirens blaring. When she steps outside, she sees that Zane's house is totally swarmed by the military. She's not supposed to get any nearer, but she still catches a glimpse of the scary stuff that goes down next. Zane, who's gone all mutant, chucks Ryan out the window, and just like that, she's dead. The troops bust into the house and fire at Zane, ending up killing him as well. Later on at the base, Abigail is keeping an eye on Rick when she hears more troops roll up. Since Collingwood is tied up, sorting out this chaos, Abigail uses the opportunity to snatch Rick's card key and poke around. She sneaks past security and sneaks into Collingwood's office. Inside, she finds all these files that show the volunteers are being mixed with animal DNA. Collingwood thinks it's the next step in evolution, and he's named it Homo Titanians. So, Collingwood is having a chat with Colonel Solano and the NASA folks. They're trying to close the program, saying it's not based on solid science. The volunteers are starting to get violent, and this is turning into a crime scene, not a space mission. The last folks who tried something similar were the Nazis. Colonel Solano wants the experiment gone from his base, but Collingwood and his advisor argue that it's up to the defense ministers, so they're not going anywhere unless the ministers tell them to. After they meet, Frey tries to convince Collingwood to call it quits, but he just brushes her off. When Rick gets sent home, Collingwood tags along to tell him his sight will come back in a day. They goofed up thinking the brain could handle supercharged senses, and poor Zane's mind just couldn't take it all, but a new operation might set things right. Abigail loses it and insists on the truth, so Collingwood finally spills the beans about them injecting animal DNA into the volunteers. He knows he can't promise it'll work, and he gets why Abigail is worried, but he reminds her that they knew there would be some risks from the start. Rick's gotta do this new treatment to stay alive, but Abigail can't stand the thought, and keeps her distance for a bit. The next day, Rick peels off his bandages and sees just fine. He also decides to shave his whole head so he doesn't have any patchy spots. When it gets dark, he finds out he can see everything super clearly, and he's so blown away that he rings up Collingwood to say he's in for the operation. While the family's chilling at home, all the volunteers are getting operated on, but it's a real mess, and most of them don't make it. At the end of it all, only Rick and Tally are the ones left standing and in good shape. The next day, Andrew, Abigail, and Lucas pop over to see Rick and Tally. They're freaked out to find out they've turned into these weird creatures that can only talk by touching and using a sound so low we can't even hear it. Rick presses his hand on the glass, dividing him and Abigail, which makes her start crying. She cries even harder when Collingwood hands her Rick's wedding ring. Tally and Rick are heading off to Titan in a couple of days, but until then, they get to chill at home. Rick struggles to get dressed in regular clothes, and when Abigail steps in to lend a hand, he accidentally smacks her. He tries to see if she's okay, but Abigail's so freaked out by him that she can't help but pull away when he tries to touch her. Rick just chills in the pool most of the time, 'cause he feels more at ease there than in the house. After tucking Lucas in for the night, Abigail peeks outside and spots Tally in the garden, her hand all bloody. Rick doesn't seem fazed by this. He walks up to Tally and they start chatting through some funky finger tentacles that pop out. Just then, the soldiers show up in the area and discover Andrew's lifeless body in the shower. They start heading towards Abigail's place as well, making her bolt upstairs to hide with Lucas. The soldiers hit Tally with sleep darts, and they had to use a bunch before she finally went down. But when they get near, Tally shows she's not sleeping and whacks one of them dead with the tentacles. The others instantly start shooting, trying to take her out. Next up, the soldiers go after Rick, but with his newfound strength, he just takes them down easy-keasy. Rick's trying to dump the last soldier in the pool when Abigail hears the noise and rushes out to stop him. Bummer, it's already too late, and once Rick figures out what he's done, he bolts. Colonel Solano tells his whole crew to start hunting for Rick, brushing off Collingwood, who tells him not to kill Rick because he's valuable for research. Abigail and Lucas get moved to the base for their own protection, but Abigail splits the moment she figures out where Rick's headed. After checking no one is tailing her, Abigail rushes to their usual hangout, and sure enough, Rick's already there. Abigail sticks out her hand to show she's not afraid anymore, and once Rick's tentacles wrap around her wrist, she plants a kiss on him. Right then, the army choppers show up and take them down. Abigail comes to at the base with Collingwood right next to her, telling her they had to harm her for her own sake. The Pentagon's closing the program pronto, so they gotta ship Rick off to Titan ASAP. This is 'cause Tally confirmed that Earth's air is gonna mess with their minds, or straight up kill their new bodies. But they can't push him into doing it because it might end up killing him. So it's up to Abigail to persuade Rick to go. Then she's brought to see Rick, who's basically trapped in a glass box. Collingwood is asking Abigail to give Rick some quetiapine. It's a drug that wipes out all your memories, kind of like a chemical brain wipe. Abigail isn't happy about it, but Collingwood says it's the only thing that'll get him to go. A soldier hands her the shot of quetiapine from a drawer, but Abigail purposely drops it so he has to bend down and grab it. Then Abigail steps into the cage, and after shooting Rick a meaningful glance, she injects him, which makes him pass out. As Abigail steps out, she invites Freya to join her, while a soldier heads over to Rick to prep him for their journey. But Rick's just faking being knocked out, and he offs the die. Collingwood figures out that, when the soldier wasn't paying attention, Abigail sneakily grabbed saline from the drawer, and that's what she handed to Rick. The soldiers start shooting, but Rick simply dashes off and tucks himself away in dark rooms where he can see better. Abigail heads out to get Lucas, with Freya showing them a different way out, and they catch up with Rick, who's pretty banged up. Lucas and Abigail give him a hug to show they're not afraid, while Freya is on the hunt for some meds. But out of nowhere, all the soldiers pop up. Collingwood warns the ladies to split, or the soldiers will blast everyone, but Abigail ain't having it. Collingwood is mad and wants the soldiers to start shooting, but Solano puts his foot down and says he won't let them shoot 2 defenseless women and a kid. Then he points his own gun at Collingwood, and all the other soldiers do the same. When Collingwood is taken away by the cops, Abigail runs over to Rick. Her hug helps him hold on to his most important memories. A bit later on, Abigail and Freya start working on this Titan II project, trying to save the world in a more moral way. Meanwhile, Rick gets shipped off to Titan, where he shows off his new body that has wings and can fly around his new digs. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more incredible stories like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. I'll be back with another video soon.